up and running again. So welcome to session 4. I think this is going to be a really, really interesting session. And as I said, I think everybody will leave here a little bit wiser than when they started. Just to look at SRFSI from an academic standpoint, we have at this current point in time 26 published peer-reviewed journal articles. So that in itself, I think, is pretty impressive. And they're across 20 different journals. We're not just talking about one thing 26 times. We're capturing across a broad range of journals and topics. We also have a further 10 at this moment that are currently under review, 7 more nearing submission, and a further 30 where researchers have identified they've already got the data. They just need a bit of time to write it up. So my guess is that when we come back to this in 5 years, we might get around 50 peer-reviewed journal articles that have come out of SRFSI. So that's impressive. Not sure why my computer is automating everything here. Let me go back. We also have 17 international conference presentations, including some recent award-winning presentations at the World Congress of Conservation Agriculture, and 4 book contributions. So this is a pretty impressive feat academically. Of course, that means that very few people here will be able to know everything that we've learned from SRFSI. None of the project leaders as well. There's just so much that we've learned. So in this session, what we've asked is for, I think it's 21 different academic papers. So to take the 6,000 to 10,000 words of that academic paper and present it in a strict 3 minutes. So obviously they won't cover everything from that, but we're hoping to get this idea around giving us a quick summary of our academic literature. So thank you to the presenters that took on that challenge. It's not an easy task at all. We've broken that into 3 sessions or 3 sub-sessions, and we're going to play these back to back to save time. The first one is around proof of concept, the second one around adoption and scaling, and the third one around exploring the gendered issues of cassie in the Eastern Gangetic Plains. So these are the papers that we have to start off with I think 1 late withdrawal. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8 presentations. I'm going to quickly stop sharing my screen and hopefully share it again, and we'll have this going. But hopefully by the end of these videos, what we will see is a really succinct understanding of why cassie should be promoted. All right. Excellent. My computer playing games. Bear with me one moment. So we're moving to proof of concept, playing back to back. Let me share my screen again. All right, so welcome everybody to our academic session on proof of concept of cassie.
Hello friends and distinguished guests. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Today, this is a proud moment for me to present the outcomes in the form of publications which appeared in Field Crop Research on the behalf of SRFSI family and all my co-authors. In this paper, the research questions that by the adoption of conservation agriculture-based such intensification can increase the crop yields and crop system yields and irrigation water productivity. This paper evaluated under 436 on-farm trials across the 3 countries of the EGP for 3 years in different rice-based cropping systems. In this paper, that crop yields and water productivities. through this paper, on-farm trials produce strong science that says and proves CASI provides alternative options to the farmers for improving crop and system yields with reduced irrigations, water use. And farmer can choose that any of the technologies and cropping system from the basket, of the technologies and package. You know that EGP is mainly dominated by rice, wheat, and rice cropping systems, but are cultivating in traditional way. These cropping systems are not competitive with alternative options of other cropping systems. But there is a strong potential to improve these cropping systems by intensifying with the introduction of short duration legumes and fiber crops, and converting to triple crops provides better yields in sustainable way. There is another options that our study clearly indicated that diversifying with rice maize gives higher system yields. Where is possible, depending on market, climate, and natural resources. CASI management practices increase the yields of maize, wheat, and lentil crops by an average of 5%, and improve the water productivity of rice, maize, and rice, wheat, and systems by an average of 9%. Partial CASI, which is adopted in non-rice crops, options provides lesser but still valuable benefits to yields and water productivity in rice-based cropping systems in the Egypt. This paper is clearly proved through the large on-farm trials that CASI can improve crop yields with lesser use of irrigation water. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Alison Lang from CSIRO in Australia, and I want to introduce you to our paper, Enabling Smallholder Farmers to Sustainably Improve Their Food, Energy and Water Nexus while Achieving Environmental and Economic Benefits, which was published in Renewable and Sustainable Energy Reviews in 2020. In this paper, we used meta-analysis to compare two types of full CASI crop management, partial CASI management, and conventional crop management. In the full CASI treatments, rice was either dry direct seeded or it was mechanically transplanted into unpuddled, untilled soils. In both full CASI treatments, all dry season crops were sown using CASI practices. In the partial CASI treatments, dry season crops were sown using CASI practice, while the rice was sown using conventional practice. So the soil was tilled, ploughed and planked before the seedlings were manually transplanted. In the conventional crop management treatments, both the rice and the dry season crop were established using traditional practices with the soil well tilled before each crop. We compared crop management practices across 10 indicators to assess their performance in the EGP. And these 10 indicators were, across the cropping system level, yield, the energy required to produce the crop and the energy productivity of the cropping system, CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions, the irrigation applied and the total water required to produce crops and the water productivity of the cropping system, the labour required in the cropping system, the cost of production, and lastly, the cropping system gross margins. We found that under CASI and relative to traditional practice, cropping system yields increased by up to 5%, while the total energy required to produce a crop decreased by up to 12%. In turn, this meant that the energy productivity, which was the amount of crop product divided by the total energy used to produce that product, increased by up to 19%. At the same time, greenhouse gas emissions from all crop management operations, including irrigation, tractor use, and fertilizer applied, decreased by up to 12%. The changes were greatest in the full CASI systems, but still significant under partial CASI. CASI also reduced the irrigation water required in cropping systems by more than 35% and the total water usage by up to 8%. This, combined with the increase in cropping system yields, increased water productivity, which is the amount of grain yield produced per cubic metre of water, again by up. Labour costs decreased by up to 40%, and this combined with the lower water and energy usage resulted in reductions in the cost of production of up to 20%. These lowered costs of production, combined with the increased yields, resulted in gross margins which were up to 25% higher than those in the conventional baseline. Again, the greatest improvements were found in the full Kazi systems, however, in partial Kazi practice as well. I hope you found this brief taste of the paper interesting, and I encourage you to read it in full. Thanks for watching.
Hi everyone. This is the abstract of the paper published in the journal Agricultural Water Management, which describes about the improved water management practices that can improve the cropping system productivity as well as the profitability of the smallholder farmers for the Eastern Gangetic Plain. In this paper, we used a cropping system simulation model to examine the effects of improved water management practices combined with CASI technologies to improve the incomes of smallholder farmers in EGP. Rice-based cropping system dominates the EGP and have been traditionally rice-wheat systems. But recently, with the use of Rabi maize, it has gained considerable importance due to its wider climatic adaptability, higher economic returns, and greater efficiency in irrigation water use. The increasing volatility of the fuel prices in increasing the volatility of the cost of irrigation for smallholder farmers. We use the cropping system model APSIM to compare the different long-term productivity scenarios and profitability for the rice maize system under both zero tillage as well as the conventional or traditional management practices. APSIM was parameterized, calibrated, and validated for rice maize cropping system in Bihar in Eastern India. Our results show that rice maize system in Eastern Gangetic Plain can produce comparable yields under zero tillage to those achieved under conventional tillage system, and that less irrigation water is required in the zero tillage system. Zero tillage maize resulted in higher plant available soil water, which improved the crop water use efficiency, reduced the production cost as we can see in the graphs, and led to the higher gross margins and return per rupee spent to produce the crop compared to the conventional management system. Our results have broader application across the relatively low rainfall regions in the Eastern Gangetic Plain and are more broadly applicable in the IGP, mainly in the parts of Uttar Pradesh and Terai region of Nepal, as well as globally in other low rainfall rice maize cropping system areas where vulnerable subsistence farmers are constrained by the high input cost and inefficient agronomic water management practices. I hope you find this article interesting, and thanks for watching.
Hello friends and distinguished guests. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. It is my great pleasure today to present the outcome of SRFSI in the form of high impacted journal in Journal of Cleaner Productions on behalf of my all co-authors. In this paper, we addressed the research question that conservation agriculture-based sustainable intensification can reduce the energy requirement and CO2 equivalent emissions in rice-based cropping systems of the smallholder farmers in Eastern Gangetic Plain while improving the energy use efficiency and productivity. This paper is validated and documented in large number of on-farm trials across 3 countries of the EGP. Our results are statistically very strong and powerful. If you know that in Eastern Gangetic Plain zones, the rice and rice wheat cropping system are the major dominated cropping systems, while we have new emerging cropping systems as well. And we found that through the on-farm study that rice cropping pattern demonstrated the highest energy use and CO2 equivalent emission than other alternative cropping systems, which are rice wheat mung bean, rice wheat jute, rice maize, and rice lentils, and so on. Conservation agriculture-based sustainable intensification management practices reduce the total energy usage between 5% and 11% compared to traditional practices. It is also reduced the CO2 equivalent emissions between 11 to 16% relative to traditional practices. The efficiencies of energy use was higher by 14 to 17% across the cropping systems under CASI than conventional practice. It is also important that by the adoption of partial CASI, also significantly reduce the CO2 total energy requirement of rice-based cropping systems and significantly increase the energy use and EP and CO2 equivalent emissions of all systems compared to conventional practice. CASI management practices produce higher crop yields and gross margins with less energy use. In general, in traditional way of that, when we increase the management level for increasing the crop yields and gross margins, we also increase the energy usage and the other natural resources. But by adopting CASI, this can be reversed. We can take harvest more with less. This is also contributing directly to the sustainable development goals of clean environment by reducing the global warming potential and clean energy use. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone. This is the abstract of the paper that has been communicated to the Field Crop Research Journal, which mainly describes about layering different smart management practices to sustainably maintain rice yields and improve the water use efficiency in Eastern India. In this paper, we have layered smart crop management practices to increase the sustainability of the monsoon rice or the Kharif rice yields and improve the water use efficiency for Bihar in Eastern India. Traditionally cultivated rice is very water and energy intensive. Wet soil is plowed several times before compacting it prior to transplanting. Standing water is also retained in the field until the canopy closure. We knew that 3 management practices that have been separately shown to use less water energy than traditional crop practices. These are mainly dry direct seeded rice, alternate wetting and drying, and improved crop varieties. In this research, we examined the effect of combining these practices. We also tested the value of using simple perforated PVC pipes, which are also known as water pipes, to implement the alternate wetting and drying in the rice field. These pipes are readily available to farmers, whereas other measurement devices such as theta probes are not readily available and often cumbersome for the applicability to the farmer's field. Our results show that layering direct seeding with a medium duration rice variety and irrigation under mild alternate wetting and drying management reduce the irrigation water to produce the crop by around 35% while maintaining comparable rice yields to the conventional or the traditional rice management practice. As well, the perforated PVC pipes were a convenient, straightforward and cheap method to measure the field water in farmers' field. We believe that this research has identified ways for farmers to simply replace the unnecessary and unsustainable conventional system of maintaining continuously flooded rice fields. And our paper is under review with Field Crops Research, and we hope that it will be published very soon. I hope you find this video interesting. Thanks for watching.
Hi everyone, I'm Alison Lang from CSIRO in Australia, and I want to tell you a little bit about our paper, Improving Smallholder Farmers' Gross Margins and Labour Use Efficiency Across a Range of Cropping Systems in the EGP, which was published in World Development in 2021. In this paper, we explored the labour requirements under conservation agriculture practices for several rice-based cropping systems across the Eastern Gangetic Plains. Our results are from over 400 field trials conducted on farmers' fields over 3 years between 2015 and 2017. This is a very large data set for on-farm experiments, and our results are statistically robust. We quantified the labour demand under conservation agriculture, which as applied here is a more mechanised practice than traditional crop cultivation. Next, we quantified the costs of production and then the gross margins under both conservation agriculture and conventional practices for 6 cropping systems which were widespread or emerging in the EGP. I'm going to show some key results from the rice wheat, rice maize, and rice lentil cropping systems. Labour use was 35 to 40% lower under conservation agriculture management than under traditional crop practices in all the cropping systems. This reduction in labour use was achieved while maintaining or increasing crop yields. Conservation agriculture practices reduce labour demand excuse me, by eliminating pre-sowing tillage operations, by mechanising crop establishment, and by facilitating easier weed control through the use of herbicides and the planting of crops in clear lines, which reduce the time taken for manual weeding operations. Average gross margins were 20 to 30% higher under conservation agriculture practices than under conventional practice. The reduced labour requirements contributed to reduced costs of production. Combining these with higher cropping system productivity under conservation agriculture-based practices led to the increases in gross margins. As well, average gross margins in the rice maize and the rice lentil systems were higher than those in the more common rice wheat systems. This was a result of higher productivity in maize than in wheat, and in the higher economic value of both maize and lentil compared to wheat. I hope you found this brief taste of our paper interesting, and I encourage you to read it in full. It's a really interesting analysis of some of the socio-economic outcomes from this agronomic research. Thanks for watching.
Good morning, everybody. This is Biplav from UBKV, and for next couple of minutes, I'll be sharing our presentation on SRFSI scientific explorations. Since inception, we have been focusing on identifying technological and research gaps in promotion of conservation agriculture. And accordingly, we have tried to address these issues through our research intervention at UBKV by the entire team of West Bengal, involving our students, and we have generated certain publications apart from the regional publications in due course. Conservation agriculture depends largely on glyphosate and other selective herbicides for successful farming. We all know that glyphosate is banned to use in cropped field recently in many states of India, including West Bengal. In absence of glyphosate, the situation may reverse if we cannot control the weed flora effectively for this zone. With this background, we tried to explore the potential alternative options to glyphosate in zero-tillage wheat and maize. We assigned this program to a student of agronomy. We can see that two herbicide combinations, that is glufosinate ammonium plus flucytosulfuron and glufosinate ammonium plus flumioxazine, they showed their effectiveness in controlling all sorts of weed flora and may serve as an alternative to glyphosate. Being located in sub-Himalayan plains, the par-humid climate facilitates the infestation of weeds. Again, changes in pattern of tillage, planting systems, and management strategies, it may bring changes in existing weed flora. To address the weed management issues in various crops, here are the publications of those important findings published in Indian Journal of Weed Science, where we could see that tembotrione in maize, carfentrazone plus metsulfuron in wheat, and bispyribak plus pyrazosulfuron in rice are the potential post-emergence molecule. While standardizing the alternate crop establishment protocols, we assigned this task to a doctoral student in agronomy. We found that unpuddled transplanted rice followed by zero-tillage wheat could increase the productivity, profitability, and energy use efficiency in rice wheat system. Considering the non-availability of labor during peak season and the rising cost of fuel, we have tried to explore the possibilities of unpuddled transplanting. This has been published in the journal Uraija, where it shows the potentiality of unpuddled transplanting in our zone. It was a huge challenge for us to sow a small seeded crop like jute through zero-till drill or happy seeder. However, we standardized the protocol for CA jute, and even ICR documented our protocol in their website. All our efforts have been highlighted in the publication Zero Tillage Technology in Jute, a Successful Venture in West Bengal. It has been published in International Journal of Current Microbiology and Applied Sciences. We also found that we could enhance the seed rate and nitrogen application rate to 150 kg per hectare for achieving higher productivity in zero-tillage wheat, which has been published in Journal of Cereal Research. Study on soil health is also a crucial aspect in conservation agriculture. Assessing profile distribution of important soil attributes, it provides an insight regarding the behavior of the soil. Our publication, Vertical Distribution of Total Organic Carbon, Total Nitrogen, and Other Important Soil Attributes, and their relationship in alfizole and entizole of West Bengal, published in International Journal of Environment and Climate Change. It will provide a clear picture of these important attributes for sustained crop production. Another important publication related to carbon mineralization rates and kinetics has been published in Sustainability, which reflected that rice and maize residues showed almost similar amounts of carbon mineralized over time with surface application. However, residue incorporation significantly increases carbon footprints, while retention of residue lowers it. Nutrient management studies through NDVI sensor and decision support tool Nutrient Expert also indicates that in our zone, wheat could respond up to 150 to 155 kg nitrogen. Any major shift in farming practices such as reduced tillage or no tillage operations have a profound impact on microenvironment on which the crop is grown. Again, retention of crop residues alters the local environment by affecting soil temperature and moisture, which may provide soil-borne microorganisms a favorable habitat. So what happened to disease dynamics under conservation agriculture system? We are having few publications on these aspects. A review paper on plant disease dynamics vis-a-vis conservation agriculture published in Journal of Mycopathological Research. Another paper on effect of conservation agriculture based rice wheat system on sheath blight and spot blotch diseases in eastern India published in the same journal. We are having another review paper on wheat disease dynamics in Southeast Asia under changing climatic scenario. Moreover, two of our students have worked intensively on this aspect, and our findings from the research publications and PhD theses are, though at initial years no plots had more diseases, however with the time there is no significant difference between conservation and conventional tillage plots. We found the higher activities of soil dehydrogenase and acid phosphatase, including their populations of soil antagonists, mainly beneficial organisms in CA plot. Regarding socioeconomic perspective, characterization of research nodes in terms of a unit-free integrative approach, namely farming system index, has been constructed. Identification of farming system index for research nodes help the researcher to prioritize the problem and addressing those accordingly. This has been published in International Journal of Bioresource and Stress Management. While importance of conservation agriculture in the face of climate aberrations, declined soil productivity, and lower negative farm income in North Bengal economy has been highlighted in our publication, Can Conservation Agriculture Be the Saver of Farm Economy?, which has been published in Journal of Crop and Weed. Besides this journal paper and thesis, we are also have some bulletins, extension literatures, success stories, policy briefs for various stakeholders. We are hopeful that all these publications will be very much helpful for the entire academic fraternity and farming community, those who really want to move with the baton of conservation agriculture. That's all from us. Thank you all.
This is a video abstract for our study entitled When Cereal Intensification is Not Just About Cereals, Secondary Implications of Agricultural Transition in South Asia. It's relatively easy to measure the direct outcomes of CASI adoption, and we now know that farmers across the Eastern Gangetic Plains can obtain productivity and profitability benefits through CASI adoption. What remains unexplored is what those direct benefits actually mean to households. And this is where we can start to understand the true livelihood implications of CASI adoption. This study aims to humanize the impact evaluation of CASI practices by exploring with CASI farming households what CASI adoption has enabled them to do. Through an in-depth photo voice study, we explore with 24 CASI adopting households across the Eastern Gangetic Plains how they allocate their saved time and money experienced through CASI to look at the indirect benefits of CASI use. We do this through visual and verbal assessments of the most significant change that has occurred in their livelihoods through CASI adoption. Our study identifies a diversity of different strategies employed by CASI farmers to utilize their extra time and money, from learning new skills to reinvesting in agriculture and even participating in new community initiatives. What we find is that the initial uses of extra time and money are often allocated in economically multiplying activities, such as crop and livelihood diversification, agri-aligned livelihood diversification, and even non-agricultural livelihood diversification. The impacts of these strategies have broad-ranging impacts that can be linked to increased resilience, improved educational and nutritional outcomes, and overall benefits to life satisfaction. Importantly, the changes that CASI adopting farmers are identifying in their most significant change statements identify cyclical benefits being experienced. Essentially, a focus on cereal intensification enables diversifications and reinvestments that create further additional time and money savings. They are also strongly linked to increased life satisfaction. In humanizing the most significant changes CASI adopting households perceive, we can start to unpack just what these direct benefits mean to farming households. We also learned that the benefits of zero-till, and more broadly cereal system intensification, may be more than originally envisaged and open up major opportunities for compounding benefits. This highlights that while the direct benefits of CASI adoption may be substantial, the indirect benefits may be even more impressive. All right, so hopefully everybody is convinced that CASI belongs in the Eastern Gangetic Plains now. Thank you to all those presenters. What we're going to look at now is adoption and scaling studies. So if we accept that CASI is good in the EGP, what is it that we have to do in order to then promote it and make sure that it's taken up? All right, here we go.
Digital tools can support extension service.
Forgive me, this is not playing in the order that it should. One moment. Video abstract summarizes the research published in the Journal of Agricultural Systems by Brendan Brown, Goku Podell, and Timothy Krupnik. It is a collaboration of the CISA, SRFSI, and Roadmaps projects. Measuring progress towards agricultural mechanization is difficult, as it tends to be measured by tractors per unit area, despite multiple non-agricultural uses for tractors, meaning it's not a good indicator of agricultural mechanization. In this paper, we develop a more nuanced approach to quantifying progress in agricultural mechanization. We apply the novel stepwise process of mechanization framework to explore the status of agricultural mechanization on the Nepal Terai. This is something that, despite decades of machinery change, promotion, and intervention, is yet to be quantified. We apply this framework to explore the status of 9 sustainable agri-mechanization machines that are used for planting, fertilizing, or harvest. Using survey data across 1,569 households, representative of 14 districts on the Nepal Terai, a picture emerges of what appears to initially be stagnation and low mechanization. Despite some machines having the presence and promotion in Nepal of decades, usage remains limited, as is evidenced by these simple binary adoption rates. However, this doesn't tell the full story. Using the proposed framework, we can go deeper and identify a few key trends. Firstly, the red we see, representing negative evaluation of machinery, tends to be limited, meaning that it is not that people do not want to use the machinery. Conversely, the yellow we see that represents information gaps is dominant in the majority of machinery investigated. This means that closing information gaps will be crucial to enabling agricultural change and agri-mechanization in Nepal. We can also see through the green, representing unassisted use, and the purple, representing ownership, that this is generally low. Despite this, there is usually a substantial pool of adopters, represented in blue, that could be quickly convinced to use these machines, especially if some of their constraints are addressed. The major constraint here is that of limited ownership rates and corresponding access to machinery. This in particular justifies future focus on viable service provider business models, service provider decision-making, and custom hire centre feasibility studies. Importantly, this research not only provides a baseline for future analysis of the pathways and implications of agri-mechanization scaling in Nepal, but a useful framework to analyse adoption processes more broadly.
Hi, my name is Peter Brown from CSRO, and this is a presentation about a paper called Application of Innovation Platforms to Catalyse Adoption of Conservation Agriculture Practices in South Asia. This work was conducted by 23 co-authors and is published in the International Journal of Agricultural Sustainability. Conservation Agriculture-Based Sustainable Intensification, or CASI, has been proposed as a package of practices that could be used to promote or improve the sustainability of smallholder farm productivity and profitability. However, existing extension systems are not set up to support widespread adoption of CASI. Traditionally, adoption has often been seen as a top-down linear process, which often fails to deliver programs to poor and marginal farmers. Adoption is further complicated because CASI is a package of technologies, practices and knowledge, and thus it is more difficult to achieve adoption. New approaches are therefore needed. This paper examines the utility of innovation platforms, or IPs, as a tool to catalyse adoption of CASI for smallholder farmers in South Asia and generate opportunities for rural micro and entrepreneurs in areas with high rates of poverty, small farm size and complex labour markets. IPs have been identified as a powerful tool for promoting agricultural development. IPs are a multi-stakeholder process and are defined as a physical or virtual network of stakeholders which has been set up around a commodity or system of mutual interest to foster collaboration, partnership and mutual focus to generate innovation on the commodity or system. IPs diagnose problems, identify opportunities, find ways to achieve goals and create mutual benefits with stakeholders. IP serves as a vehicle for change in the interaction among a wide range of stakeholders at different scales. We set out to establish IPs in the SRFSI project nodes. We conducted various rounds of training, review, assessment, analysis, and evaluation of IPs. We established 37 node IPs and 5 district IPs. We conducted 4 detailed case studies. Our key learnings were the importance of initial setup, having a good facilitator, defining clear entry points, providing initial project support, looking to enable sustainability of the program, continuous learning and reflection, and building strong benefits for women to improve engagement and empowerment. To conclude, we know that CASI can be profitable with reduced labour requirements. Innovation platforms can be a useful approach to identify problems faced by smallholder farmers, facilitate approaches to overcome problems and institutional barriers, and can lead to a broader adoption of CASI. Thank you.
Digital tools can support extension services for smallholder farmers. These digital extension tools can include farming YouTube videos, agri apps, farming WhatsApp groups, and more. It's really easy to make these tools, but it's really hard to make them useful, particularly in developing countries. We interviewed people on the ground to learn what it takes to make useful digital extension tools. We did 40 interviews of tool developers across Africa, South Asia and Southeast Asia, as well as 52 interviews of digital extension users in Northeast India. They answered 6 questions for us. How do we work out if the context is suitable for a digital extension tool? How do we make the content useful? How do we make the interface useful? How do we make the tool scalable? How do we make the tool sustainable? And how do we dodge negative impacts? The developers and users explained important considerations for each of these 6 questions. I encourage you to analyse and discuss these considerations on the linked website. But if you don't have time for detail, respondents gave 3 pieces of advice with the most frequency and the most emphasis. Number 1, build the tool with users from the beginning so we avoid reckless assumptions about users' wants and needs. Number 2, plan for sustainability so our tools don't die with our projects. And number 3, work with existing platforms, not new ones. Working with pre-existing apps or pre-existing YouTube channels or pre-existing SMS services can help you deliver more value, more quickly, and more sustainably. After doing this research for 18 months, it makes me feel angry and sad when costly mistakes are repeatedly made with digital extension tools. I hope this video or the link below or a conversation via email can help you create impactful tools with rural families in developing countries and If the resources aren't useful for you, very keen to chat over email as well.
This is a video abstract of a review paper titled Farm Mechanization in Nepal, Policy Context, Drivers and Options. It is currently under review at the Journal of International Development. Currently, Nepal has a large workforce engagement in agriculture, but its contribution to the GDP is quite low. Mechanization is also low, especially in the hills due to the difficult terrain. The government, through its specific policies, is committed to increase access to machinery as a way to expand and intensify agricultural productivity. However, future policies must be cognizant of current and future climate uncertainties, along with diverse topography and labor shortages to ensure promotion of scale-appropriate mechanization. This review, therefore, provides a timely reflection on the pathways in which mechanization has occurred in the neighboring countries of India and Bangladesh to inform the development of Nepal's own future mechanization policies. Lessons from both countries provide a unique learning opportunities and highlight areas of prioritization to expand machinery use in Nepal. Our review indicates that the current situation in Nepal is due to various contributing factors and an overall lack of enabling environment necessary to address the needs of small landholders in Nepal. Based on our review, we learned that it is not a single policy, but a combination of various initiatives working in tandem that pave the way for agricultural mechanization in both India and Bangladesh. Based on our learnings, we suggest certain initiatives that require both long and short-term investment. First and foremost, there needs to be credit support to meet the needs of farmers and encourage private sector involvement to address the gaps, especially in terms of repair and maintenance, and perhaps then it can eventually move towards manufacturing its own machinery. Custom hiring centers are also beneficial to smallholder farmers with limited finances to invest in purchasing machinery. At the same time, significant investment is also required in research and development of technology, which incorporates farmer experience. Therefore, a robust workforce needs to be built to ensure future technical specialists are trained to meet the growing demand of machine use and ensure scale-appropriate tested technology can be promoted given the diversity of agroecological regions in Nepal. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will be presenting our paper titled Expanding Zero Tillage Service Provision Perspectives from Machinery Owners in the Eastern Gangetic Plains. We are doing this study because while we know how economically beneficial service provision is for machinery owners and customer farmers, there are still limited service providers across the EGP due to the high investment costs of agricultural machinery. Also, currently all literature on ZT service provision focuses on economic analyses, and there is limited research on the socioeconomic impacts of service provision on their livelihoods and households. This study focuses on the informal individual service provision sector that includes farmers' collectives and farmers' groups that are currently the dominant component of the fee-for-hire agriculture economy within the EGP. Our study aims to understand the experiences of being a service provider by analyzing the learnings, implementing processes, and ongoing business strategies of current service providers, along with the perceptions of their community on the drivers and constraints of ZT service provision, and finally on how all these factors interact and influence CASI uptake in the EGP. The study analyzed a subset of 30 interviews out of the SRFSI qualitative dataset of trial service providers and service provider typologies. A separate codebook was developed based on the DMD that focused on topics relevant to ZT service provision. That included motivation and experience, support networks, and more. A total of 1,819 excerpts were coded to 30 themes defined by the codebook using deduced qualitative software. Service providers across locations noted positive lifestyle changes through increased finances, reduced drudgery, and overall household family satisfaction. Similarly, as service providers were perceived to have higher engagement with agriculture department offices and local universities, they are also respected as knowledge holders within their communities. All these benefits, along with the recent trend of labor shortages in the EGP, also meant that perceived community demand for ZT was increasing. However, in order to successfully expand and outscale CASI in the EGP, service providers have several challenges to overcome, including technological issues of ZT functionality like seed drop, rusting fertilizer boxes, and the heaviness of the machine. Several service providers also felt that a majority of these issues were exacerbated by a lack of appropriate training resulting in unskilled trainers along with a lack of maintenance services. Additionally, community perception was seen to be constrained, with perceived land type needed for ZT and a lack of subsidies to invest in machinery. For better uptake of ZT across the EGP, service providers noted 3 things. The first was improvement of existing extension networks for continuous information flow. The second was the establishment of more training centers in their communities for mechanics needs, operators, and service providers themselves. And the third was to have more subsidies and loans available for ZT attachments. And ultimately, these solutions will be able to help other farmers also invest in agricultural machinery.
This is a video abstract for our study titled Understanding Decision Processes in Becoming a Fee-for-Hire Service Provider, a case study on direct seeded rice in Birha, India. The situation in Birha currently is that there is growing uptake of zero-tillage practices, yet there are very few DSR service providers. We know that DSR can provide benefits to farmers, so what we would like to see is a growing number of zero-tillage farmers, increasing drill ownership, and zero-tillage service provision. What we want to know is how to maximize DSR service provision. To understand this, we undertook 43 semi-structured interviews with zero-tillage drill owners to understand what actions are required to move us from where we are to where we want to be. In particular, we wanted to explore 2 things: how to increase DSR farmer uptake and how to increase DSR service provision. Through an in-depth structured analysis, we identified a mind map full of interrelated drivers that complicate the provision of DSR services. On the demand side, interested farmers with suitable land are few and far between, and most farmers have a deeply held belief that transplanting rice will provide them the greatest productivity despite labour constraints. Poor performance, driven by various farmer-level constraints, also drive negative perceptions, which are exacerbated by negative publicity of non-DSR service providers. This makes transition to DSR in the monsoon much more complex than transitioning to zero-tillage wheat in winter. On the supply side, regardless of technology, agricultural service provision requires high levels of altruism given the complexities of debt recovery and constraints to the scale of a business. This was further exacerbated in DSR service provision, where new and unfunded tasks were required, which led to issues with profitability of DSR service provision. Overall, this means that providing DSR services was reserved for those only with strong community mindedness and a willingness to forego income to provide benefits within their communities. From this study, we've identified 3 clear next steps for scaling direct-seeded rice in Birha. The first is that outsiders are needed to directly support DSR promotion, as service providers are not culturally or otherwise able to act as promoters. Secondly, selection of DSR service providers should include screening for altruistic motivations. And finally, DSR scaling will need alternative promotional pathways and will not scale in the same way as zero-tillage wheat, given the identified extra complexities.
This is a joint presentation based on the qualitative study undertaken by SRFSI in the EGP. Much of the literature has focused on the agronomic benefits of CASI. There have been few studies on farmers' perspectives and experiences, and mainly focuses on binary adoption, use and non-use, which misses out on the nuances within the adoption process. Our research is based on work done in Africa, which has not yet been undertaken in South Asia. Taking that into consideration, the stepwise sampling framework was developed to understand the decision-making processes and evaluation around C adoption in the EGP. Respondents were selected to represent all typologies from the framework to get an insight into the regional commonalities and location-specific differences. We conducted in-depth semi-structured interviews and analyzed using Deduce software. We used the decision-making dartboard framework, which focuses on 4 main resources: physical, financial, informational, and human across 6 levels. A total of 336 farmers were interviewed and categorized into 3 main typologies for the purposes of our analysis. Progressing farmers include interested and experimenter farmers who positively evaluated CA. We find that limited progression is due to a combination of comparative advantage, resource limitations, and enabling environments. More effort is required to limit misinformation and provide supplementary knowledge to address issues after technology testing. Training for farmers and operators were key to address issues that can limit progression to use. Institutional support is crucial during testing phase to reduce high risk associated with technology adoption. However, once ZT technology adoption increases, there is a requirement of machinery access and skilled operator to support wider use. This means that to increase progression, strategies need to focus on engaging relevant stakeholders and developing policies that incentivize purchase of CASI machinery with intention to provide services.
As we already know from the experiences of the progressing farmers that various factors come into play when making decisions whether to adopt or discontinue the use of CASI technology. In this dataset, we have analyzed the experiences and perceptions of disinterested and disuser farmers. As you can see here in the circle, mostly the farmers' negative perception revolves around the prerequisites that is required to practice CASI, comparison with the traditional methods of farming, community and government influence, access to supplementary resources, as well as household resources at individual level. However, mostly cited reasons for evaluating CASI negatively is associated with information access, which might be either lack of information or misinformation, such as renting of CASI machinery is expensive. The other reason among the disusers was related to the negative experiences of farmers, such as yield loss and thus not being able to make profits, or increased drudgery in order to minimize the seed drop issues while using CASI technology. Weak finances, less land constraints, as well as crop preferences within the household level also affected the decision making of using CASI technology. Now, let's hear from the experiences of the farmers who have been practicing CASI for over a year using their own resources and investments. Farmers perceive that there are many indirect benefits associated with the use of CASI technology, such as cost savings which could be used to improve the socio-economic condition of the household, time savings which could be utilized doing various activities or involving in other income generating activities, on top of the other agronomic benefits associated with CASI technology. Farmers also said that they had to overcome some constraints related to machine access, information gap, land constraints, and store management while practicing CASI. Constant support from family members and information networks were additional driving factors for continued use. However, they also highlighted some constraints which are in red here, if not addressed, might lead to disadoption in future. Overall, the findings from these papers further confirm the agronomic benefits as well as adds on to the list of many indirect benefits associated with CASI. Although the themes are common across all the typologies, however, when we analyze using different levels of resources, how they perceive each theme or factor is different. Therefore, for further scaling out of CASI in future, there needs to be a tailored approach for sustainability. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Bhavya and this is a presentation on the paper titled Farmers' Experience of Weed Management Under Conservation Agriculture, Insights from the Eastern Gangetic Plains of South Asia. Now the first question is why this is important. Primarily for three reasons. Farmers' experience with herbicides under conservation agriculture based on sustainable intensification or CASI are largely undocumented in literature for the EGP. Some studies suggest that changes in herbicide-based weed management impact farmer perceptions about ZT and hence its uptake. Changes in weed management also reallocate labor division between genders, which further impacts its uptake, and this is why this study becomes important. So two research questions are addressed in this study. Number one, what are the farmer experiences and perceptions about herbicide-based weed management in the EGP? And what are the gender dynamics of herbicide use in the EGP? To answer the research questions, the data was collected through in-depth semi-structured interviews analyzed on reduced software using the decision-making dartboard framework, which focuses on 4 main resources, namely physical, financial, informational, and human resources across 6 levels. For the purpose of analysis, the paper classifies zero-tillage typologies into ZT adopters, ZT disusers, and ZT new users or progressors. As is seen here, the data was collected across 6 locations in 3 countries of the EGP, which is India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, and a total of 336 farmers were interviewed in the region and categorized into relevant typologies. The research findings are primarily 3. First is that herbicides are commonly used in the region for up to, in fact, a couple of decades in some study locations. We did see some negative perceptions around their use among the community, such as crop damage, stunted crop growth, reappearance of weeds, to name a few. But these were common among ZT disusers and progressing farmers, while ZT adopters/implementers reported time, cost, and labor benefits from herbicide use. Another research finding is that herbicide-based weed management is actually a male domain, mainly due to the perceived design of spray tanks that makes it heavier for women to carry on their backs, partly also because of the role gender norms play in restricting or confining women in the household. In conclusion, there is value in scaling up ZT by addressing perceptions around herbicide-based weed management. It is also known from other studies that scaling of ZT actually is a matter of changing perceptions than about the technology itself. In that light, it's important for the government to take extensive extension efforts till the last person in the village for correct dissemination of information on the technology, which will further impact its uptake. Thank you.
Great, thank you to all of the presenters there. So a diversity of different learnings that we have around how we go about scaling conservation agriculture across the region. And a lot of those that we still need to package together coherently for what that means to policymakers, to what that means to promoting institutions, and that's still to come. We've got 3 final presentations in our final subset that are focused on the gendered implications of CASI promotion in the EGP.
This is a video abstract for an article published in Outlook on Agriculture titled Herbicides and Zero Tillage in South Asia. Are we creating a gendered problem? Often the academic literature on conservation agriculture has taken a rather immediate and more tangible focus on the impacts of conservation agriculture, particularly agronomy. We know that CASI is in the main agronomically beneficial to most farmers. Where labour dynamics have been explored, it has been shown to be mostly beneficial, but analyses tend to be done for the household head or at household level. Because of this, we continue to promote CASI across the Eastern Gangetic Plains and claim that it is women-friendly. Yet there is very little literature to confirm this. This is often problematic, as many studies in Africa have shown an emerging narrative that CASI can in fact be women-unfriendly, often increasing their burden in comparison to freeing males to other endeavours. Our aim was to explore in depth if adoption of CASI in the EGP truly was women-friendly. To explore this properly, we knew we wanted to go in depth. So we designed a targeted photo voice survey that tracked both time allocation and understanding across the first 7 weeks of planting winter crops using CASI for 24 households, with both household heads participating. We did this across both maize and wheat and in 3 different locations. What we can confirm from this study is that CA saves large amounts of time and benefits both men and women spouses of the household, though this is location specific. Regionally, time savings averaged 85%. Those savings were overall limited in Bangladesh, where weeding activities were already limited in conventional systems. Importantly, females tended to save more time than their male counterparts, and there was no evidence of responsibilities or roles being transferred from men to women. What we did identify is that in terms of weeding skills, there was a tendency for men and women to identify different weeds in the same field. And this means that there are gendered skill sets within the household for weed management. We also found an overall poor ability to name or distinguish between weeds in fields, though gender did not seem to be a differentiating factor. This likely reflects the dominance of non-selective herbicide use, though knowledge gaps were more evident in maize and particularly in Bangladesh. While we have a small sample size, our in-depth analysis leans towards confirming that cassie can be considered woman-friendly in the Eastern Gangetic Plains. It does not appear to increase women's burdens as experienced by users in this study.
This is a video abstract for a paper currently in preparation titled, "How does gender influence the evaluation of conservation agriculture in South Asia?" Agricultural technologies are aimed at increasing productivity and reducing drudgery and tend to target women farmers. Previous studies have focused on the gendered impact of technology adoption by examining either male or female household heads to compare challenges faced as individual beneficiaries. However, there is limited knowledge on the impact of technology adoption of women in a male-headed household, especially in South Asia, where decisions are largely taken by male household members and plots are managed as a household. We use CA as a case study to understand the gender differences in the evaluation of technology adoption. Respondents from a larger data set were selected based on their current cassie use and involvement of their spouse in agriculture. Female spouses of the selected households were then asked a similar set of questions to understand their cassie experience. The analysis focused on 5 main components to identify commonalities and differences in the experiences and evaluation of cassie technology. Both spouses commonly identified savings in labor, time, and finances, and were in agreement regarding the impact of cassie adoption on improving household finances, which was then resources and change in status experienced through cassie. While there were some common spending patterns among spouses, there was a tendency for women to highlight savings while their spouses highlighted expenditures. In terms of use of time, women were less likely to engage in paid labor work and allocate more time to culturally prescribed tasks. Change in status was also experienced differently, with women placing more emphasis on intra-household changes compared to their spouses. We find that cassie adoption is beneficial to both household heads, and there is a common understanding of benefits and savings. Those engaged in providing ZT services positively evaluated a new income source. However, there are differences in knowledge and in the utilization among men and women that is reflective of the opportunities available and restrictions regarding culturally prescribed roles of man as the breadwinner and woman as the caregiver. Future cassie promotion therefore requires inclusion of gender sensitization component within the training package to engage in critical discussions surrounding these norms with both household heads towards a common understanding. Further, evidence from some locations indicate that combining skill-based training to expand home-based opportunities for women can potentially provide livelihood diversification opportunities. Thank you.
The title of the study is Necessity as a Driver of Bending Agricultural Gender Norms in the Eastern Gangetic Plains of South Asia. There is limited literature to understand the relationship between culture and gender norms in agricultural participation and perceptions and experiences on breaking gender barriers in the AGP. To understand gender equity and women's empowerment, measures of normative change among men and women, including views about gender roles and masculinity, may be particularly significant. Studies have shown that views on traditional practice and dominant perception are important to understand gender bias. This study aims to understand gender constructs that define female agricultural role and perception of men and women regarding the current status of women in addition to the changing gender norms and roles. A subset of SRFSI qualitative data set was used for this study with interrelated themes on gender norms, gender barriers, and female involvement in agriculture. These included 34 interviews. While we are all familiar with the current gender norms across the regions, what our study finds is that there are some key drivers bending these norms and leading to changing culture. We can see in the green that these drivers include need of women in future of farming, obligation due to absence of men, project exposure, agricultural mechanization, labor shortage, and outmigration. In the blue, we can see that this means that changing involvement in agricultural activities, sharing space with men, change in conventional attitudes, reduced dependence on men, and increased aspirations of women. Extending women's involvement and scope in the future agricultural development initiatives, particularly those connected to technology and mechanization, as well as adopting steps to encourage their engagement, might enhance gender inclusion in the EGP. While gender norms have been broken in many different ways, yet there is still a long way to overcome the culturally rooted and interwoven systematic gender standards in the EGP. If the gender gap in agriculture is to be narrowed in the EGP, the policies and development strategies that are implemented should be restricted not just to broad agricultural development, but focus on specificities to bridge the gender gap in agriculture. Apart from that, community engagement to overcome social barriers and social criticism is also necessary.
Great. Thank you so much to all of the presenters. For anybody who's had to do a 3-minute thesis or a 3-minute paper, it is something that's really challenging. And I think the presenters did really well there to capture what they had to. Just before I pass over to Pratibha, I think that there's a really clear narrative that can come through in this session. And that is, we first set out from SRFSI, does cassie belong in the Eastern Gangetic Plains? Should farmers use it? And if they do, what happens? I think we can tick it and say our science says yes. Our second set then looks at, okay, it's good. What do we do next? And we have all of these different learnings that tell us the different things that we can do to do that. The third set of papers then say, if we do promote this, is it inclusive? And I think from our early work there, and we actually have a lot more gender specific work that can come from some recent data collected, but on face value, we can say that it is an inclusive set of things to be doing. So that's our narrative that comes through in our publications. Now we have about 20 minutes. I want to hand over to Pratibha, but I might suggest 2 things. The first thing is, I'm sorry for my screen. When I went to reply to people who have sent questions about my papers, it turns my screen off. So I will try and reply to them now. The other one is that, I'm sorry, my DD is just yelling at me. And the other one is that what was I going to say? If we can keep the discussion maybe not at a paper level, but looking at the more generic narrative, because I think if we start asking about papers, then we're going to be here for several hours. If you're interested in the papers, suggest reading them. That were my 2 things. But now over to you, Pratibha.
Hello, thanks, Brendan. Can you hear me? But, okay, so yeah, wow, today is, I can say, the historical moment, day in my life, because it's first time I have gone so many research publications just in 1 hour. And I think that was a great experience listening to everybody. And I'm also thankful to Brendan just pointing out that if we start to discuss all these publications in details, it will be full day discussions. But I just, before starting for opening the opportunity for everybody, I just want to thank the team for this opportunity. And also, I would like to congratulate each and everyone in SRFSI team for rocking at the recent 8th World Congress of Conservation Agriculture, which I was also fortunately, proudly able to participate on behalf of ACIR. And there was no surprise, but there were several like awards for the team. So that was something I wanted to share from the very beginning. And I understand there is a vibrant discussions already going in the chat box. So without any further ado, I would just like to go back to Manohara, because I understand yesterday also there were questions around farmers, typology or gender. Is there anything else you would like to raise here at Manohara?
Hi Pratibha, hi everyone. Just a minute. Yes. Hi, everyone. It's really great listening and also reading very much impressive scientific contribution and paper. So just starting with the paper, yes, this is not a time to discuss about the paper, but what will be our strategy or approach to make this credible scientific research finding and learning to make accessible to the farmers at all level, like a farmer, women from farmer, and also smallholder farmer, extension officer. So what do we do with this all publication to make this finding also be reached to the people so that they know about the situation of the CASI and also scaling, why it is advantage and how they can promote it, making this knowledge accessible to farmer. This is strategic. Maybe it will be good to discuss among ourselves so that it also helps us to set some sort of recommendation for future. Right. This is one. And another is that technology. Again, the technological, because of situation, our context and location is very much different between country, within the country. So what sort of lesson really we draw among the CASI technology, which technology really would be beneficial for especially smallholder farmer and especially women farmer to continue adoption and also use of technology, because many social science research and gender research in this region already pointed out that technology is not easily adopted by women, because there are a lot of challenges that paper from IMA and other paper also highlighted. But what would be our reflection on it? So is it are we saying that all technology that we are providing or promoting is really beneficial from equity, social equity and gender lens or not? This is just reflection maybe needed to discuss.
Yeah, thanks, Manohara. So, Brendan, we can maybe start answering those queries and then move on to the next, because I understand there are several different unrelated type of questions. So, yeah, please.
Definitely. No,
yeah.
I think I've got a really quick and easy answer for Manohara on her first question. That's the purpose of the SRFSI knowledge repository. And that's why we have the different user groups on the homepage. So if you're a researcher, you want a very different set of information to if you're a farmer. We've put some time and effort into trying to develop the different materials that are targeted at different audiences. Now, I guess for most projects, they probably come to a similar point as we're at now. The final year of a project is when a lot of your publications and learning is coming out. So there is a time constraint as to how we do that as well. And it's not unique to SRFSI. But it is something that we've been trying to think about, making sure, through these videos, you don't have to go and read a 10,000 word paper in order to learn some of this, but there is obviously still things we can do to make that information more accessible on that SRFSI web repository.
Just supplement to Brendan, if you allow me.
Sure, go ahead, Mahesh.
That's another that these all publications came, all publication outcomes has been shared, with through focus group discussion and all with communities as well. So these all information is already shared with our local partners and with when we visited to them. So it's already shared, and we asked their opinion that what we achieved from your field while collecting data together. This is the information that we got it. So this is correct or wrong. And they proved that. So it means that it's already reached there, but definitely this, syllabus, course age and then videos and then repository and will be helpful. And there are other platforms already that this help groups and all, they are using this information in different form, which is, locally produced in local language. So there are already is there, and then it's already communicated with them.
So, thanks, Mahesh and Brendan. And I'll just, I was reading the chat box and there was an interesting question from Ranjita, and probably I will just hand over to her. I think some of the questions regarding innovation platform, Peter has already answered, but the one question on the something like a disease incidence, which is my question too. So I would ask Ranjita to please or any additional question. Yeah.
Thanks, Pratibha. I think actually who was it? I think it was Apurva who answered that question, but he sent it to me directly, the response. He said that disease is marginally higher in conservation agriculture plots, but can be easily managed by application of chemical or biological agents, either on residue or soil. But I guess still, I mean, the question still remains, how do you maintain the motivation of the farmers, to continue to do that? But thanks. I mean, generally, I think all my questions have been answered, or Manohara has asked the other ones. I just want to say something, congratulate the project team. This is an incredible achievement. Often there is this perception that in research for development projects like these, where we are expected to generate impact and international public goods at the same time, that it is very tough balancing these, and usually it is the publication, scientific publications and IPGs that suffer. But you have demonstrated that this is very doable, high quality publications, very insightful publications. So I think you might want to share your strategies and tips and tricks with other researchers and projects on how to do this. I think that would be useful. But just to reiterate what Manohara said about, hey, lots of great research outputs. You have a great repository, but just a little bit of thinking on, is that enough to translate this very rich set of outputs to research outcomes, and consequently to subsequently to development outcomes? That's I guess would be good for the team to reflect on. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Ranjita.
May I quickly respond to that, Pratibha?
Sure, Brendan.
Just to say, tomorrow we'll talk about our development outcomes as well. And one of the pathways that we're trying to make sure that there is institutionalization from all of this new knowledge is also through what we're terming scaling reports for each of the geographies. So we'll cover a little bit more on that, hopefully tomorrow. Although I haven't made the presentations yet, I'll have to try and insert it now. But we'll also come in that pathway tomorrow as well.
Yes. Thanks, Brendan. So I'll just try to find Professor Hamid, if you have any question.
Yes. Thank you very much, Pratibha. After a long time, I see you. Okay. First of all, I'm really overwhelmed, excited, and also a little bit confused. You see, the best thing I understand from the project implementation is that you have developed a beautiful partnership and a strong partnership between the regional institutions, among 3 different countries. I think that institutions and organizational capacity, and also the scientists and the other professionals, together with the farmers, will form a foundation for KC implementation or sustenance in the future. So I congratulate everyone for doing this all. Then there are also, everyone mentioned, I also like to mention, I also had gone through some of the publications. The quality of publication is definitely very high, and the journals are widespread and very prestigious journals that you have published. I counted 96 journal papers and papers have been published or are ready for publications. So I congratulate once again for those. And also, there are some regional papers that we could see this morning. So counting those, there will be around 150 or more than this. So these has generated a lot of information, technological insights, and not only technical, but some of the issues that have been brought out is the socio-economic background and insight of the adoption practices or adoption and non-adoption practices. I emphasize on that non-adoption because I have been associated with several projects and programs in the tribal areas, in Chittagong and hill tracts, that I learned that adoption is very, very difficult. If we want to jump on the widespread adoption in 5 or 10 years and a single platform will do the job, I think that's the wrong idea. Then what I need that I must emphasize on that is this will definitely help promoting agriculture mechanization. I appreciate that. But what next? One thing I would like to be, why I am confused, because one of the papers very rightly pointed out that, not the papers, one of the presenters rightly pointed out that one size does not fit all. And that is true for everywhere. There are regional differences, there are intra-regional differences also. Even within the village, there are differences. Monohara might have noticed that, and she also put some question that whether this will bring any disparity or social disparity. I do not think so, because in the earlier part of the Green Revolution, the economist presumed that this Green Revolution will bring the increase the social disparity, but that didn't happen really. But I think with the promotion of this TASI technology will definitely help lift the poor people if the technologies are adopted. But one thing that the CASI technologies, these are not, I believe, either I missed it or I couldn't figure out that CASI technologies for inter and intra-regional situations or locations or hub that have not been properly defined or described. And also, there are indications that partial CASI technology will also do. I agree, because maybe zero tillage will not work everywhere. For example, lowland rice. So there is no question of zero tillage. So this will not. But for each and every, or at least regional location specific recommendation, or in a tabloid form, whether we can have these technologies recommended or adopted by the farmers. That needs to be done. And also, I also put the same question to Dr. Peter Brown, that what about I have gone through his paper, very interesting paper. He presented briefly, but I have gone through that beautiful paper, and it is very straightforward. I appreciate. I appreciate Dr. Peter Brown's courage, that he has spelled out that the current system or approach of the extension system will not do. I fully agree once again. But what is the alternative? I don't know. So these are the things that really concern me. I want to learn it, because unless we learn the system and the activities, how I will get lost. It's enormous amount of information. Once again, I congratulate the scientists and the extension people and other people, policy planners, those who are involved in implementing or facilitating implementation of the project. Thank you very much, Pratima. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hamid. Brendan, you want to have any comment on?
Just a quick clarification, and I think this is where language also comes into where the project has got to. So in the third phase of the project, we've tried not to use adoption and non-adoption. We're trying to go to that next level of understanding, and particularly when you look at those different typologies, that's when you can start to think about, is it certain subsets of populations that tend to end up at certain typologies? Technologies may not be specific or may not work for everybody. I mean, that's just common sense. But trying to understand where those differences occur, that's part of what the project process has tried to do in this last phase. The last one, Pratima, was maybe suggesting, I know innovation platforms are a hot topic, so maybe if Peter wants to answer any of those innovation platform questions.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Brenda and Pratibha, and thanks for all the questions and discussions from the reviewers. They're really good insights. I'm not sure if I can really add much more in terms of the innovation platform story. It is kind of in the paper there, but I guess I'd be interested in the reflections from our partners in country who sort of were involved in the on-ground implementation and what their thoughts are for where some of this work might go in the future and how they might be rolled out, and or whether the innovation platforms are continuing. I've kind of, unfortunately, kind of lost track with what was happening on the ground there because we've been unable to visit and get a really good idea of what's going on. So I feel like I've been a little bit remote from what's been happening on the ground. So I guess I'm turning that question back to our colleagues in the regions there in the 3 different countries, and perhaps if we can ask them to provide some reflections might be really useful.
Peter, there's 2 minutes left. You're very ambitious
Yes.
with your questioning.
Yeah. So, Brendan, can take one more question? I think Eric has.
Oh, I didn't have much question, but just on the considerable amount of publications that was produced and the lessons to learn from that. I think the first thing is that the very good data sets were generated, and the talent of the team was to fully analyze them and use the same data set with the various analyses to write multiple papers. So that's where the size of the publication list comes from. And we know at ACR it's pretty common that not all data are actually analyzed. People collect more and only report on a particular angle to these data. So I think the credit goes to the team for having done this effort of exploring essentially the data set they have, which are large but finite, into a pretty large number of analyses. And that's true for the proof of concept work, and that's also true for the socioeconomic and gender work. So that's maybe first lesson for you. And then I had a particular query about the mention. Now I know it's a bit specific, but in the study about the farmers' perception, the mention that there is a high expectation of government support. Now that's an interesting question then as to whether these expectations can be met.
We lost Pratibha there?
I don't know. So Brendan, you want to ask some of maybe the participant, maybe Apurba or people who can provide. I'm not sure which country that was mentioned, the high expectation of government support, but maybe it was Nepal. I don't.
I'm not actually familiar which paper either, but maybe
if I could add, Brendan, I think the expectations of government support was a regional issue. There are differences in what type of support was expected. And it also sort of extended to the fact that we as sort of development programs also are seen as part of that because we work with government agencies on the ground. So there is expectation that if a machine breaks down, I don't have to think about replacing it because it's the government. It's their job to do so. And then if there is something that needs to be bought, then there has to be subsidy available. So there's a different range in terms of the in-country experience, but it was a commonality across the EGP. Thank you.
I think there's also questions based around ownership that tie into that as well, particularly around machinery maintenance. Whose responsibility is it if a machine stops working? So I think they all interplay, and we did find that as a regional issue. I think Pratibha might be back, but just on the lines of Eric's question, if there was anybody from our regional scenario that had anything further to add before we hand back to Pratibha. There might not be as well.
Yeah, sorry, got a little disconnect of internet. So if any, I know we are already 2 minutes over our allotted time. So, but still, if any burning question which is pertinent to this session, I think I will be happy to take it. Unless Brendan give the ring.
It is here at my desk. But no, what I wanted to say, Pratibha, is there's been a fair few questions in the chat. So we're monitoring those chats and we know who's asked it. What we'll try and do is put together a document that has answers to the various questions that have been asked, as long as we can work out who the question is directed to. So we'll endeavor to answer everything that's come up in the chat as well.
Yeah. So probably at the moment, I will like to thank everyone for the discussions. And if you have anything, maybe it's good to have directly email to Brendan if any unsolved.
Seems Pratibha's internet might
this session was named a celebration. Okay, sorry about that.
I'll rudely interrupt because at least Pratibha was being, internet is not connecting to me. I'm not sure about everybody else. So apologies, Pratibha, if it's my internet, not yours. But thank you so much, Pratibha, for facilitation. Thank you so much again to the presenters. Again, it's just not easy to be doing that. So
thank you.
To get all that together is great. As we said, we're 3 minutes over time by my standards, completely unacceptable. But anyways, there's the bell. And we'll be back tomorrow. It's really interesting session tomorrow morning, because that is where we're going to, for the first time, share the initial findings of our large quantitative survey. And there's a huge amount of knowledge that comes out of that. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that, and also from hearing from each location about convergence, sustainability, next steps. And I really encourage everybody, if they can make session 6, please do make it a priority, because that's where we'll be getting some direct interactions with the reviewers around the big picture items that they want to know more about. And it'd be great to have people, not just me or people from CIMMYT speaking, but to get the inputs of everybody. So if you can make session 6 tomorrow, please try to. Eric, anything else?
No, thank you, Brendan. Masterly done, and yeah, very interesting. And so what would be good tomorrow would be to have a little bit more input from the people on the ground, although I noticed that we had quite a lot of interactions today, which was very satisfying. So thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place.
Exactly.
I just wanted to wish Brendan a happy birthday today. Thanks, Brendan, for setting this up on your birthday.
Happy birthday, Brendan. Happy birthday, Brendan.
Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday, Brendan.
As I joked to my partner, I said the reviewers should give us an extra point because I did this on my birthday. So just remember that, everybody. Thank you.
Brendan,
we need a treat.
We are not into point and ranking and scoring, so don't worry about the point.
And then Eric, this is the beauty of SRFSI, that once we have a meeting, someone has a birthday. So today is also birthday of Brendan. So that proves our,
We're also missing, Mahesh, your dancing party that you organized.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one of the problems. Anyway, we're missing a lot. Okay, good night, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.